So you're interested in Frost. Fair enough. He's a very interesting frame, especially with all of the elemental reworks. Let's start with the first thing, his passive. This is actually very important for him as his abilities last 100% longer, the cold status effects. This is important, and he gains 50 armor for each enemy afflicted with cold. This is also very important. The armor increase actually increases the durability of his bubbles. It does scale off of armor, so keeping as many enemies frozen as possible is very, very, very good. Ice Wave is such a good ability due to its large reach, and Cone, it afflicts status effects on it, and with the augment, let me see if I have it here, it leaves a lingering trail. I do not have the augment, unfortunately. A lingering trail of shards that will continuously afflict it. This allows a lot to happen. The reason he's really good with this kind of thing specifically, his 4 actually shreds armor. You can get this to a decent range. It won't be as good as something as like Volt over or Discharge, where it hits enemies and then it's technically doing trio damage and it's hitting through stuff. It doesn't matter though, because you can make him a powerhouse. Look at that overguard cap of 29,000. Mwah, chef's kiss. And yet, that's not actually why he's super strong. One of his augments, Biting Frost, gives him 200% critical chance and critical damage against frozen enemies. This is actually very important because Cold got a good few reworks. If an enemy hits 10 stacks, they are classified as frozen. This is super easy with his kit, as all of it revolves around afflicting enemies with cold stacks. His 4 will actually pretty much immediately freeze most enemies. Let's set this up. I'm using Ensnare to bring everybody close, and then we can hit this. You can see it shreds and stacks everybody with 10. So you can just tear into them. Cold also has another status effect other than the hard CC. Cold increases critical damage, if I am correct. Let me just real quick check this. Because if I'm correct, it's critical damage. Yes. Critical damage by 10% on the first stack, 5% per stack. This adds up to 55%. However, when frozen, it's stacked up to 110% critical damage. The hidden secret of Frost and why he can be super strong is the fact that he's actually unironically a critical demon. Just freezing enemies and having the effects last 2 times longer than any other frames. It's like Ash's bleed, where it lasts 50% longer and deals 25% more damage. It's like that, except Frost is actually a really good weapons platform due to the critical damage increase. Weapons like the Bubonico has only a 2.3 times critical damage and a pretty low critical chance. Combine that with the 200% critical damage and chance increase from frozen enemies and the innate 110% cold critical damage multiplier, you start dealing damage. Unironically, he's one of the easiest frames to get pretty early on, being from Lieutenant Let Krill, if I'm correct. So you can start using him pretty early. The Overguard, probably not, as it is an augment unless somebody can give it to you. His bubble is really good if you're struggling on defense missions, as the first few seconds of it being up actually gets classified as a building period where it can stack further up. Also, if you don't have the helmet, don't worry, his 1 isn't that good, but it is a little bit of a projectile that you can throw at enemies to inflict cold stacks. You can also use his 1 to detonate the bubbles. It's not that useful, honestly. It's a artifact from an earlier period of the game where things like that were super okay because it was just a light spammable ability. We don't use them that much anymore. A good example is Ember and Revolt, where they have actually been traded out for the fact that it will imbue your weapon with that element. Overall, though, Frost is a pretty solid frame, and he's super early to get and super easy to build. Even using like basic range additives and such like that, like, let's see here. All I'm using is stretch, blind rage, which can be a little bit frustrating to get like to you. So honestly, if you don't even have blind rage, I would just recommend anything like intensify or precision intensify, mainly because the rest of your ability strength don't really matter. But if you can get precision intensify or intensify, and maybe it won't guarantee the armor strip, 78% still a lot, especially if you're not in steel path. 78% armor reduction will still help you clear a ton of content if you're struggling, whether it be building your weapons or not. Weapon building in non-steel path content isn't that difficult. It's getting the mods to make it a viable alternative, and that can be a little struggling. That's why frames like Frost are pretty good for beginning of the game kit. Anything that can strip at least even a little bit of armor from the top is worth it enough to consider adding to your arsenal. He has auxiliary effects that are giving you a chance to avoid part of the content of the game while you are still learning, and that is not anything that should be frowned upon. Having an 110% critical damage increase because you pressed a button is very, very fair to a newer player. Some frames don't typically get that. Even Excalibur, as he is one of the most basic frames in the game, a lot of his things are ability spam. He is somewhat a remnant of an old build of the game. You can't fully expect, especially depending on drop rate of like energy and stuff like that, or if you don't fully understand what's going on with his kit to be useful, it can be a little bit of a struggle, especially while you're still learning to build. If you're dropping, oh, well, if I just throw strength on, I'm going to be doing better, without realizing like you need range as well, or you need to be able to survive an encounter, Frost is definitely an easy frame to get into. Yes, he's at least a tiny bit into the game, being from Lek Krill, but he's also super nice as an introduction frame to frames with auxiliary effects without being overwhelming like Mag or Volt. As easy as Volt is to learn because haha funny go fast, a lot of his kit comes from the idea that he has a very interesting fort. Discharge is one of the most interesting abilities in the game, and don't get me wrong, his shields are really good. However, as a new player, you don't know that unless somebody tells you. That's not entirely fair to you, and Mag is also one of the most extensive beginning characters, to say the least, with going so far as to be one of my top frames personally due to how complex you can make her builds, but also she has a depreciated kit that is not super strong in this regard. Frost is super simple. You can use his 4, you can run at enemies, you can place a globe down on a defense point if you're struggling to survive that kind of thing. He's very versatile, and you should use him because that critical damage bonus does matter, and it can definitely help you if you are struggling in the beginning of the game.